2 months after the Hebrews had left Egypt, they reached Mount Sinai. They encamped near this holy mountain for many months, and many legendary events took place during this period. Among them, the revelation of the Torah and the receiving of the Ten Commandments. Among the epic incidences that occurred during this period was the incident known as the Incident of the Fire, when the earth opened up and spat out fire and flames, and swallowed alive many of the Israelites as a punishment for their constant complaining against Moses.
And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. And he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them.
The place where this event occurred was named Taberah, and is described as having been located only 3 days' walking distance from the holy Mount Sinai. Finding Taberah would not only mean that we would have located a legendary biblical landmark in East Africa, but also that we have found the area in which the lost Mount Sinai was located, since Taberah is said to have been located a very short distance from biblical Mount Sinai. The Bible's depiction of what happened at Taberah is like a scene out of a science fiction movie, with the earth opening up for no natural reasons, spitting out fire and flames, and swallowing alive many people. This event is unique because, unlike many other miracles that are described in the Old Testament, the incident at Taberah was an event that would have left behind a permanent physical trace where it happened, for future generations to study and verify. We're looking for an impressive opening in the ground that would have happened overnight, and where the earth would have opened up, spitting out fire and flames. The name of the place should resemble the name that we find in the Bible, namely Taberah. And the event should have left behind some oral tradition, even though it happened more than 3,000 years ago. The name Taberah is the first clue on our search. The etymology of this name is given in Numbers 11.
And he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them.
The name Taberah is rooted in the words fire and the name Yahweh, and is explained to mean the fire of Yahweh, usually translated as the fire of the Lord.
Because the fire of the Lord burnt among them.
This has led many scholars to interpret the name Taberah as a corruption of an original word or name that has been lost to history due to scribal error. Some scholars have suggested that the name Taberah and the name Kibrot HaTa'ava, the name of another station that the Hebrews passed on their 40 years long wandering in the Sinai desert, are actually two corrupted versions of the same name that has been lost to history. This, however, isn't supported by the biblical text, which lists Kibrot HaTa'ava and Taberah as two distinctly different stations in Deuteronomy 9. The name Taberah is certainly a corruption of an original word, but which word? To find the original name for Taberah, we must first figure out which language the Hebrews spoke during the Exodus. The Hebrews spoke the only language that was understood by all the people of Israel at the time of the Exodus. That is, the ancient Egyptian language. Not only is this strongly indicated by the names and words that are recorded from the Exodus generation Hebrews, which are always Egyptian names and words.
The names Moses, Aaron, Pinchas, these are all Egyptian names. Moses is simply this part of Ramses, Tutmosis, Ramesses. This is Egyptian for born of.
But also by the historical fact that the Hebrew language wasn't a spoken language at the time of the Exodus, but a literary language that was used only by scribes and for ceremonial purposes. It wasn't until the Hebrews settled in Canaan and developed a homogeneous culture that Hebrew became a spoken language. But at the time of the Exodus, Hebrew was simply a priestly language that was used only for writing and recording. The etymology of the original name for Taberah could therefore not have been rooted in the Hebrew language, but only in the Egyptian language, which was the lingua franca at the time of the Exodus. The original name of Taberah must therefore translate to the fire of Yahweh in the ancient Egyptian language. But how would that sound? What was the Egyptian word for fire, which we're told was the prefix in the original name of Taberah? According to the lexicon of the ancient Egyptian language, the word for fire in ancient Egyptian was a two-letter word that was written in D and B and is read dub. We can hear this word vaguely, even in the word that we find in the Hebrew Bible today. This would have been the original prefix in the name Taberah. More tricky is the quest for the original pronunciation of the four-letter word that is usually read as Yahweh, which we're told was the suffix in the original name for Taberah.
And he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them.
Many different theories have been proposed for the original pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton Yahweh, and as many as 7 different readings have been suggested for this name, with no single theory being agreed upon by scholars. This name has been surrounded by a lot of unnecessary mystery and confusion, and the issue regarding its original pronunciation and meaning has not been settled after more than 2,000 years. What then was the original pronunciation of the name Yahweh? And can we find it today? The biblical text suggests that the original pronunciation of the name Yahweh was simply Yahu. As clearly indicated by the suffixes in the names of Old Testament prophets, like Eliyahu, Yarmiyahu.
By contrast, after the time of Moses, Israelite names start to be formed using Yah or Yahu as part of the name Yahweh. Elijah in Hebrew is Eliyahu. So you start to have theophorics, names that use the name of a deity, which are using forms of Yahu instead of El.
And supported by the reoccurring statement in the Bible that the Hebrews, known both in ancient and modern times as Yahudi, would be called by God's name. Thus, Yahudi, the worshippers of Yahu. The original pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton in the Old Testament could only have been Yahu. This name is made up of 2 separate words, Yah and Hu. Yah. In this context, the prefix Yah is similar to the English interjection O, as in O God, O Lord, and is meant to denote a proclamation of some sort, in this case of the name Hu, which in turn is the most ancient name for the God of Abraham. We can find the equivalence of Yah in the twin Arabic language as the prefix Yah, as in Ya Allah or Ya Rab, meaning O God or O Lord. And in spite of the Torah's contradictory claims about when and to whom the name Hu was known,
the biblical sources differ on this point. In Genesis 4:26, the earliest humans worshipped Yahweh as Yahweh. The name was always known. Exodus 6, verses 2 to 4. It's assigned to P. And here God says, I am Yahweh. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, but I did not make myself known to them by my name, Yahweh. Now this contradicts the J source.
We find that this word was used as early as in the time of Jacob, where it forms the root of many of the Old Testament patriarchs' names. For example, Joseph, Joseph, or Yehuda, Judah.
In Genesis 4:26, the earliest humans worshipped Yahweh as Yahweh. The name was always known.
The prefix Yah, followed by the most ancient name of God, Hu, would form the lost original pronunciation of the name Yahweh as Yahu. The ancient Egyptian word for fire, attached to the name of God Yahu, would be Dabhu or Dabyahu. This should be the original name of Taberah. But can we find biblical Dabhu or Dabyahu in the deserts of Ethiopia or Sudan?
However, after a highly stressful and demanding 3-day journey, Dougal is about to get his first sight of the Taberah earthquake fissure.
Well, we've still got some fairly low readings, which is good, but we've got to be close. I mean,
just keep monitoring it.
You are kidding me.
Dougal.
Absolutely awesome. I was expecting a small crack in the ground. Oh my lord, this is fantastic. It's up there in the Hall of Geological Fame, I think. My lord. To think this has happened. Excuse me, I'm out of breath actually with excitement at this stage. To think this happened overnight. This is the stuff of Hollywood. When you're a kid and you see those movies of streets breaking apart, this would have just opened up and ejected a whole heap of magma. This is just phenomenal. I really hope we can get some really good stuff out of this, because having got here now, I wish we could stay 3-4 days, maybe even a week. This is just geologic heaven. Oh, this is fantastic.
Before the eruption, locals recall how the ground swelled until it finally burst open in a massive explosion, throwing thousands of tons of ash and rock across a vast area, swallowing their camels and goats. This vast crack in the earth is all that was left behind.
And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp.